Welcome, everybody. I'm Jeff Toister, and I'm excited to have all of you here today for the Guaranteed Customer Experience Book Club. Now, here's how it's going to work. If you have read the book, thank you. We're going to answer your more in-depth questions about the book. We're going to use the chat function so you can respond, add your own commentary, add your own thoughts. If you will, go to chat and toggle it so it's panelists and attendees, and that will allow you to join the conversation. I think the default is just panelists, which just means me. So I'll be the only one to see the chat if you chat just to panelists. But panelists and attendees, everyone will see your question or your commentary, and that's how we'll make it a discussion today. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. If you've not read the book or you're in process, that's okay. Ask questions anyways, and we'll still have a chance to talk about some of those things. We are recording the webinar, and tomorrow, about this time, an email will go out automatically with a link to the recording. So I want you to be involved. I want you to be engaged, but you don't have to take too many notes because you'll get the recording as well. We'll also send it to any of our colleagues who signed up but could not attend. And finally, ask questions. So I have a list, a really nice list of fantastic questions that participants asked when you signed up for the webinar. You may have remembered I asked you, what's one question you want me to answer? And I've got a fantastic list to focus on today. Hopefully I'll get to them all, but I also want to take your questions. So if you have them now, share them in chat. If they come up, maybe in response to something I say or something someone else chats about, share them later on in the webinar, and that's okay too. But we'll be talking about the book, The Guaranteed Customer Experience. I'll share a few additional stories, insights along the way, and hopefully give you more tools and ideas to implement some of these concepts, to take it from just a book you read, hopefully entertaining, to a book that's actually helped you make a transformation in your business or organization. All right, so we're going to dive right in. And one of the very first questions that I got, which is an interesting question, because I worry when I see this. Let me explain. The question was, what is the one thing you need to know to create a guaranteed customer experience? Here's why this makes me nervous. I think so many times we are looking for the condensed version, the highlight, the Cliff Notes version of something, if you will. And that's not that kind of book. It's not the, here's the one takeaway or the two takeaways. The Guaranteed Customer Experience is a proven and repeatable formula for guaranteeing your customers an amazing experience. The kind of experience that allows you to attract more customers and retain them. And quite frankly, one of the biggest challenges is if you're looking for the little nuggets, just a couple little things, you'll miss the big picture. You'll miss the formula. So I hesitate to give you the one thing because there's not one thing. But what I can do is I can boil it down. And if you've not yet read the book, or even if you have read the book already, let's just go at the model from a big picture. And instead of one thing, I think there's one thing you need to know, and then 3 steps you should take to recognize and take action upon that one thing. So we'll reframe it a little bit. So the one thing you should understand about your customers is the problem that your customers are trying to solve. Now, earlier I asked some folks, what's one brand from the book that you're interested in, that you admire? A lot of people talk about Buc-ee's, which is a chain of gas station convenience stores. And Buc-ee's, the one thing that they really get is that customers on a road trip are trying to solve the clean restroom problem. They're looking for a clean restroom. And so Buc-ee's advertises it and they deliver it. So that's the one insight you need to know about your customers. What problem are they trying to solve? Sure, Buc-ee's customers want great snacks and low prices and a wonderful selection. All of those things are true. But the most important insight Buc-ee's understands is it starts with clean restrooms. And 46% of Yelp reviews about Buc-ee's mention the restroom. So that's the thing. Now, what do you do about it? How can you take that insight and win customers and retain them. And that's where the guaranteed customer experience model comes in. So if you've not read through it already, here are the 3 steps. Number 1, make a meaningful promise. And so if I understand that my customers need clean restrooms, then I can advertise, hey, we have clean restrooms. Now, it doesn't stop there. Buc-ee's advertises clean restrooms. I was on a road trip recently, no Buc-ee's in sight, but I saw another gas station convenience store advertising, wait for it, extra clean restrooms. So, hey, of course, I've got to check this out, right? So the first step is a meaningful promise that addresses the customer's problem. I'm looking for clean restrooms. You're saying you've got clean restrooms? Okay, I'll give you a try. The second step is action. You have to take action to ensure your promises are kept. And here's where Buc-ee's excels. They keep amazingly clean restrooms, and they're spacious. The average Buc-ee's restroom at their big store is larger than some convenience stores. They're absolutely amazing. And it's strange to say restrooms are amazing, but they take action. Now, when I was on a road trip a couple of weeks ago and I saw this billboard, extra clean restrooms, I've got to go check it out. I was disappointed. They did not take action. Their restrooms were not clean. They weren't horrible, but they certainly weren't extra clean. They weren't in good repair. And so on my way back, it was an out and back kind of road trip. On my way back, I passed through the same town and I deliberately went somewhere else because I knew this place was not keeping their promises. Now, if I'm passing a Buc-ee's, I'm going out of my way to go there because they're amazing. It's not just the restrooms, but I know they keep their promises. And here's the third step in the model: recovery. There's always a time when you will fall short on keeping your promises. That's just how it works. Now, hopefully it's less than 1% of the time. Hopefully it's a very small percentage, but there will always be that percentage. And when it does happen, recovery is not necessarily an apology or a discount or giving someone their money back. What recovery really is restoring trust. Restoring trust so the customer believes, hey, you didn't have your best moment, but you're going to get it right the next time. And that's why I should remain loyal. So that's that question. The one thing, it makes me a little bit nervous, but in a nutshell, that is the guaranteed customer experience model. So let's dive into some more specific questions. Again, if you have a reaction to that, if you have a follow-up question, if you have another question you want to make sure that I answer on our broadcast today, use the chat function, share with me or everyone, and let's keep the conversation going. And I'll answer some of your live questions as well. Okay, this is an interesting question. I've gotten this one a few times. The question is, how has the pandemic impacted customer experience? And I wonder, this is a discussion item for you. Has it impacted your job, or has it impacted you as a customer in terms of what you expect from the companies that you do business with? Now, I think if we asked this question a year ago, we probably have a different answer even than 6 months ago, and a different answer than today. So, and we'll also find that depending on the company, the expectations have shifted, right? So I'll give you 2 responses to that. I think there's a different answer for the customer, and there's a different answer for companies. For the customer, I've done some research on this, and customers are facing new challenges. Working from home, changing lifestyles. I had a conversation today with a customer service leader who was worried about equipping employees for those challenges of balancing work and home in the same physical environment. So for many of us, we're trying to worry about our children or our family members, our work environment and our home environment being the same. If we're leaving the home, are we being safe? When we come back, are we being safe? Are we bringing the virus back to our family? These are some huge stressors. And so for consumers, those problems have definitely changed. Consumers have also told me that generally, at least early on, maybe they were a little bit more patient, a little bit more flexible when it came to the services and their expectations from companies that serve them. Now, on the company side, I think the answer is it depends on the industry you're in. Some industries are dealing with horrendous supply shortages right now. Audio manufacturers, construction, as an example, computers. Some industries are struggling to find employees. Restaurants and hospitality are struggling to hire employees. Trucking, struggling to hire employees right now. And I think the third area is for some businesses, things have never been better. A lot of technology companies, their business is booming like never before. So it's really difficult to pin down and say, well, this is just one sector where everybody's feeling the same pain. It's not like, say, 2008, where unemployment was massive. Right now, we have unemployment in some sectors and huge shortages of qualified employees in others. So it really, really depends. It's a fantastic question, but it really depends. All right, another question here. And again, if you're tuning in, ask away. If you have a reaction to something I'm sharing, a personal take, a personal experience, please use that chat box and share. I have a great list of questions. I'm happy to keep going, but if you have a question you'd like to ask or have me respond to, please ask away. So another question I got was about getting functional leaders to see the entire customer journey. And I got this question from a number of people, so I wanted to make sure I answered it. It came, I think, in a couple of different flavors. One is, I feel like, my department owns something, but another department doesn't really understand how their actions might impact the customer. Or maybe our departments have different goals and we're not cooperating as much as we should. So a lot of flavors around that question, and I've gotten that a lot. So I want to see if I can answer that a little bit. And one, I want to turn to the book now. So if you have the book handy, page 37, this is in chapter 2. There's a section, or there's an exercise on evaluating your existing guarantees or existing promises that you're making to your customers. And I think this is a great cross-functional exercise. So if we think about a marketing slogan, for example, one of the companies I wrote about, chapter 2, was Armstrong Garden Centers. And if you're not familiar with them, it's a chain of nurseries that their brand promise is gardening without guesswork. Now that's a big promise, but what does that mean? It means you could take someone like me who's not naturally inclined and help me grow beautiful plants and keep my garden beautiful. I'm growing tomatoes right now, and I tried to grow tomatoes for years and struggled. And last year, I spent a lot more time at Armstrong, got some fantastic advice from an associate there, and I grew so many tomatoes. My neighbors got tomatoes, my friends got tomatoes, my family members got tomatoes. I never thought I would say this. I got tired of homegrown tomatoes. I had more tomatoes than I knew what to do with, thanks to Armstrong. And so now I've got another tomato crop that's growing and looking healthy so far again this year. And I can't wait for all those fresh tomatoes. So the question is, if you have guarantees or promises at a brand promise level or a product promise, or maybe even a personal promise, I have a number of people that have said to me, Jeff, I'll get back to you by Friday, or I'll do that for you by tomorrow. And that was a month ago, and I'm still waiting. So what that exercise does in chapter 2 on page 37 is it asks you to list those promises you make. And here's a great opportunity to get people from other departments at the table. Okay, we're making this brand promise. We say, hey, we've got clean restrooms. Well, do we? Well, the only way to find out is to monitor restrooms and see, are they clean? And if they're not, get to the root cause of why. So I think that's a simple way. That's not an exhaustive customer journey map. If you've done customer journey mapping, you know that can be a very comprehensive, time-consuming, and complicated exercise. This just says, let's find one promise, start there, and evaluate, are we keeping it or not? And when you get everybody in the table and you start with a question, hey, are we keeping this promise, or how can we keep this promise? That invites people to participate and buy in. And I've found that starting with a question often gets more participation in buy-in rather than going to another department and saying, hey, you guys are screwing up. When are you going to fix it? That automatically makes people defensive. But if I do this exercise as a group, you tend to get a lot more buy-in and enthusiasm. So a lot of people ask that question. I hope that helps, but specifically that exercise on page 37. All right. This is a similar question to this. And so I'm curious if you'd like to react via chat. What are some challenges you've had getting buy-in or getting other departments on board with something? I've spent a lot of time in the contact center world. One of our challenges is always marketing comes up with something, they launch a new promotion, and then we get blindsided by it. I hear that all the time. And I can tell you, I faced that challenge when I was in the contact center world. And the only way I fixed it is I went to marketing and said, hey, I want to help you make those promotions go better. Let's talk on a regular basis about what those promotions are going to be before you launch them. And then I'll prepare the team. And marketing was really excited when I said, hey, I can help you do better. In fact, we did. One simple initiative that one of my marketing colleagues had, we turned from an absolute dud into $1 million of extra revenue a year just by having a regular meeting where they give us a heads up and we discussed how to prepare the team to successfully execute that initiative. So it's doable, but sometimes we have to, if you're in customer service, we have to go and talk to the other team. So that leads us to this next question, which is, how do I get buy-in? I think our customer experience is great, but these other departments don't seem to care. How do I get their buy-in? And that seems to be a challenge, I think, for a lot of people. So let's start small. Individually or on a team level, you have to fix your house first. It's really tough to ask other departments to buy in and do great work if you are not yet optimized. And frankly, if we're being honest with ourselves, I think it's easier to point the finger at somebody else. Hey, you're screwing up, rather than look inwardly and saying, are we doing the absolute best we can? So you have to start with yourself or your team. And the guaranteed customer experience, really all of those exercises, you can adapt to an individual or team level. Are you keeping your promises? How are you monitoring your promises? What do you do if a promise is broken? You could do all of those at an individual or team level. Now, optimize that. Let's move up a level. I want to start engaging other departments. Ask them about their goals. Start with a question, invite them. That example I just gave you, I asked my marketing colleagues, what are you trying to accomplish? How do you measure success? And once I understood that, I said, well, here's how I think I can help you. And we aligned our goals together. Product departments, we want a successful product launch. Hey, what would make this product successful? How are you being evaluated? Would it be helpful if I gave you verbatims as well as data that supports the features our customers are talking about on social media or in customer service channels, and the features our customers absolutely do not like? Would you like to have that information? I think most product managers say absolutely. So the questions invite that buy-in, and now we can talk about experience. And I think finally, the big picture has always got to come back to data and organizational goals. What is the organization trying to accomplish? What does your CEO care about? And what data can you provide to get that conversation going? And here's what I mean. Imagine talking to your CEO and saying, hey, we've had a lot of customers complain about this new feature. I don't know if that your CEO gets excited or not, because it sounds more like, hey, we're in the weeds, can you help? Or can you spend more money or be stressed out? But if I go to the CEO and say, our customer service volume has increased 10% in the last 2 weeks, and half of that increase we can pinpoint to this one new feature that customers are really upset about. And here's what I think we can do to fix it. Now we're talking about a solution. We're talking about real data. Not a lot of people, not everyone. We're saying this specific number of calls or contacts or emails. And we can even put a dollar sign next to that. Our cost per contact is $5. And that means that we're spending an extra $50,000 a week trying to resolve all of these issues. That's going to get people's attention. So start small, fix your house, invite other people to the table by understanding their goals, and elevate it to the big picture using data. And I think we could do a better job of it in the customer experience world by using data combined with customers' actual verbatims and real experiences. So great questions there. Again, I want to remind you, got a very shy group today. I'm monitoring the chat here. If you have a reaction to something I'm sharing, or if you have a question you'd like to make sure that I answer about the book, this is your opportunity to share it. So please use that chat function. Got some more great questions to respond to. And this is a question I really appreciate, which is, what's the difference between an experience guarantee and a customer experience vision? I love this question because clearly somebody else read one of my other books. Got it here. This is the Service Culture Handbook. This is a step-by-step guide to getting your employees obsessed with customer service. And a big cornerstone of this book is something called the customer service or customer experience vision. And what that is a shared definition of outstanding service or an outstanding experience that gets everyone on the same page. And the most customer-focused companies have one. And I have to tell you, I wrestled a lot with making sure I had some clarity around these definitions, because in the guaranteed customer experience, we talk about this concept of an experience guarantee and making sure that everyone understood it inside an organization and was committed to ensuring that this guarantee, this promise, if you will, was never broken. So the answer to the question is really dependent on the maturity of the organization. In a very mature customer-focused organization, the customer experience vision and the brand promise or the customer experience guarantee, they are exactly the same thing. It might even be the company's mission or vision statement as well. So it's one thing. It could even be the company's external brand promise. So brand promise, experience guarantee, those are generally the same thing at a company level. And then for our employees, we translate it into a customer experience vision to let employees know what they should be trying to do. And in a mature company, this is the same thing. We're just looking at the same thing from a different angle. Now, where it departs a little bit is sometimes our organizations don't have an overarching brand promise, or the brand promise is kind of one expression and the customer experience vision is an internal expression. And that's okay too. Sometimes we just need to word them a bit differently. Hey, this is for employees. Hey, this is for customers, but they both essentially mean the same thing, or they point us in the same direction. So that's okay too. Finally, we have some organizations they're struggling to get their act together, but we have these pockets and centers of excellence. And so maybe a department or a team is really, really good at something, and another department or team is really, really bad at creating a great experience. And so if you're in that great team, maybe you have a customer service vision that says, this is what we're striving towards, but the brand promise or the product promise is something that affects both you and other departments. And so there's sometimes they're the same thing. Other times they could be very different things. Now, I know a lot of my audience is and looking at people who signed up are in the customer service world. So one thing I think to realize is that in the world of customer service, by the time a customer gets to you, something has likely gone wrong in their experience. And what do I mean by that? They have a question. There's a product or service that didn't work as expected. It's not clear what product or service is right for them. Something's not working the way it should. All of these things are things that didn't go as smoothly as they could or should in the experience. And so now customer service is here to help. And so the promise, right, the experience guarantee would be things will go well. And then they didn't. And now they're talking to you in customer service, if customer service is your role. So the customer service vision would be, okay, once I'm talking to that customer, What does a great recovery look like? What do I want that customer to feel about their interaction? I want them to feel like we've restored faith and trust. But what is that? What specifically does good customer service look like? So they can sometimes be different and sometimes be the same. And I appreciate the question because I think that's the challenge that businesses face, is trying to iron out some of those things. And rather than make it complicated, make it less complicated for employees. Give employees one thing to focus on, and one thing only. In the moment, when I'm trying to serve customers and do my best, what's the one thing I should always keep in mind? And making complex issues simple for employees is one of the best things we could do if you're a leader. So great question. I appreciate that. I've got another one, and this is a question I got a few times, which is really focused on design. How do we design experiences, products, services to empower our employees and allow our employees to do good work? And so I want to talk about that from a couple of different angles. One is empowerment is often misunderstood. And so let's clarify that first. Empowerment does not mean letting employees do whatever they want. In fact, the most customer-focused organizations that are the best at creating reliable experiences have very strict procedures for how things should be done. And I'll give you a simple example. If you go to Starbucks and order a drink, do you really want your barista to just wing it and make your drink the way they would like to make it? Of course not. One of the reasons Starbucks is so successful is that if you go to Starbucks in San Diego, California, where I'm based, or in Lincoln, Nebraska, or in Charlotte, North Carolina, and you order the same drink, it's going to be the same drink. That consistency, that reliability is why people trust Starbucks. So empowerment isn't just letting people do whatever they want. Empowerment is really one thing with three components. Empowerment is enabling employees to provide a great experience. And so Starbucks, it's well known. It's an overused example, I know, but it's an example I think most of us can relate to. Let's look at empowerment at Starbucks. So the first is we need to give people procedures, strict procedures to follow. There is a procedure to make every drink at Starbucks, and that procedure needs to be followed. Otherwise, their product becomes inconsistent. So if we don't have a best practice identified, think about your own organization. If I haven't identified a great procedure for doing things the right way consistently, I will get inconsistent results. The second thing is resources. We need to have the right resources to follow those procedures and create great consistency. Occasionally, this will happen. If you go to Starbucks, they might be out of a particular syrup, or sometimes I'll walk in and I like to drink Pike's coffee black. That's one of my go-to orders. And sometimes they'll say, hey, we just ran out and we're brewing more. It's going to take 10 minutes. Okay. They ran out of the resources to provide me that convenient cup of coffee that I wanted right then and there. Now, this doesn't happen often, and Starbucks is good at recovering. They give me some different options. You want maybe a blonde? We have some of that. Or I can make you an Americano right now, or you can wait. So I've given you three options. Which do you prefer? So they're great at that. But in that moment, they lack the resources. We got to give people the resources. Finally, it's authority. And authority says, hey, it's okay to deviate from these strict procedures or do something a little different when the situation warrants it. And so if you go to Starbucks and you order a latte, this was in the news actually, where Starbucks baristas were tweeting just this week, I think, about some of the most crazy complex orders that customers were coming up with. And if they didn't have the authority, the Starbucks barista would have to say, no, we're not going to do that. But they have the authority to make adjustments to the standard recipe to customize it to the customer's liking. So all of those things combined enable the baristas at Starbucks to create a great experience and a great consistent experience for their customers. And so we go back to this original question, which is, how do you enable or empower employees, you have to have all three of those things. And one of the big things, and I've been writing about this a lot lately on my blog, which is creating the right procedures and doing procedures the right way. Too often I see leaders create procedures on their own. Maybe they're kind of, I'll create the procedure and then I'll let you know about it. And that doesn't work very well. So another resource I want to share with you in my book, The Guaranteed Customer Experience, Chapter 6 is all about designing products, services, procedures to enable employees to execute. And there is on page 103, right here on page 103, a how-to guide to create fantastic processes. You'll find more on my blog, toistersolutions.com/blog. But this uses a simple methodology called PDCA. If you're not familiar with it, it's plan, do, check, and adjust. Because often when we come out with a new procedure and we actually try to implement it, it doesn't quite work exactly the way that we imagined it would. And so we get feedback from the people using the procedure and you adjust it. And I want to share with you an extraordinary resource. A couple of friends of mine wrote this really good book called The Problem Solver's Toolkit. And don't let the subtitle get you too nervous, because it talks about Six Sigma. And maybe you're saying, I'm not into Six Sigma, or that's too complicated for me. What I love about this book, it's written by Elizabeth Swan and Tracy O'Rourke. They do a fabulous job of taking complex process improvement methodologies and breaking them down into step-by-step and very accessible guides. And they're all in this book. And so there's a deeper dive into this PDCA model for writing procedures and improving procedures in this book, plus so many other tools that you can use right away. So it really is a toolkit. It's a fantastic resource. If you manage processes and procedures, go out and get that book today. Make sure you have a copy sitting on your desk or handy at all times. It's going to be a lifesaver for you. So great question. And thank you for asking that. I've got a few more here. Again, if you are tuning in, you have a reaction to something I'm sharing, you'd like some clarification, or maybe another question of your own you'd like to ask, please use that chat box to do so. And I'm happy to get to them. Also have some more questions from people that shared when they registered. And so I'm going to keep going on those. But again, please share via chat if you will. Okay. Question I got, and this, I think a number of people had this one as well, was on gathering customer feedback. So with any customer experience, we want to get feedback on how well it's going. Are we breaking any of our promises? What can we do better? And so throughout the book, there's a lot of exercises and activities on gathering feedback. But I want to share with you maybe 3 things that you could look at. And I'll give you, let's come back to the book if we will. Page 124, this is in chapter 7. So chapter 7 is all about looking at or monitoring customer feedback for anything that might go wrong and being able to act on it very quickly. And I was able to profile in chapter 7 an organization I'm a huge fan of, TriMet, which is the public transportation system in Portland, Oregon. And January of last year, so before we all got locked down, I had the privilege of getting to tour their command center. And their command center, I geeked out. I was kind of nerdy about it. It was pretty cool. They had 20 to 30 employees would be in this room at any given time. There's monitors all over the walls with video feeds, data feeds, and they're monitoring all of their bus routes, their trolley routes, their light rail routes, and they're looking real time for any issues. And as they detect issues, this command center is able to do a few things. They're able to share information with passengers and with partners. There's various apps and websites that also passengers rely on. So they're sharing real-time data on arrivals, on issues. They're also able to react very quickly and fix problems before they become big. And in the book, I tell a story of going to the airport on the light rail, which is a great way to get around in Portland. And there was some unexpected trouble where we are at a station, we stop, there's an announcement, there's going to be a delay. This is the airport train, so everybody's getting nervous, looking at their watch. And then there's another announcement 5 minutes later, we're not going anywhere. We've had an unexpected issue. Now, for many, many light rail systems, it would be too bad, so sad. You know, we're going to be waiting around for hours till we figure this out. With TriMet, in less than 30 minutes, they had buses showing up, taking us past wherever the problem was, downstream to another station, offloading us so we can get back on the light rail. And I remember there was a family next to me in the car, and they were panicking. They were worried about missing their flight. They'd cut things a little too close. And they happened to be next to me in the car. And then when we got on the bus, they were near me on the bus, and we got off the bus. Now we're walking to the airport. I could just see their anxiety rising and rising. They cut their flight, and they felt better as soon as they realized, oh, we're okay. And that's a big part of looking at customer data and feedback. It's not just surveys. So let's break this down a little bit. I think there's 3 places we need to look for customer feedback, customer data, if you will. And 3 places are operational data, structured feedback, and unstructured feedback. Now, operational data, that's the example I gave you with TriMet. I'm monitoring if this bus is on time or not. I don't need to wait for a customer complaint about a tardy bus to know if it's there or if it's not. And so think about your own organization. What data do you have? I worked with a payroll department once, and they were getting a lot of complaints about payroll being processed on time. One of the things we did that was so simple was we just started tracking how quickly payroll got processed and were paychecks ready on the date and time they should be. And as soon as you track that data proactively, you could make decisions. When I worked for a catalog company, we created a procedure where anytime someone ordered express shipping, we would proactively track it and follow up with the customer. We figured if they wanted to pay for express, they needed it in a hurry for a reason. And so we proactively monitored for any issues and often caught problems along the way, where there was a storm or something else that prevented the item from getting there in a timely fashion. So operational data is a huge way of getting ahead of the curve. Structured data, that's your surveys. So go ahead and do surveys, but you better use them and mine them for insights. Structured data is also things like online reviews. You're not controlling them, but if you go to Yelp or Google or TripAdvisor, OpenTable, any number of these places that might focus on your business, you're getting a lot of structured data you can use to spot issues. I was evaluating a restaurant just this week, and their structured reviews within the span of 2 weeks had gotten multiple reviews that mentioned cleanliness issues. Now, there was a 2-star review, a 3-star review, and a 4-star review. And each of the reviews said, hey, I like this restaurant. I hope they do well. I'll probably go back. But here's a cleanliness problem. 3 of those in 2 weeks. That structured data tells us we probably have a much bigger issue. We better go investigate. And finally, our unstructured data. And this might be the most difficult to manage on the surface, but it takes only a few tricks to really get to the heart of it. Unstructured data is just the conversations you're having with customers, whether it's a face-to-face, over the phone, via various channels, or even on social media where you're not an active participant, but customers are just talking about you. And if you listen to all of those signals, it's actually very easy to pick up on something. Let me give you a simple example. I'm in my favorite restaurant, Antica Trattoria. And this was a little while ago. And one of my favorite dishes on the menu is the lasagna. It is fabulous. And so I ordered the lasagna, and that night was not fabulous. Now, this is very unusual. Their food is fantastic. Now, the server, Andy, he came up to me, hey, how was your lasagna? And I said, it's okay. I don't want to offend anybody. So I said, it's okay. He picked up on that. That's unstructured data, right? Where the customer says, it's okay. Well, that doesn't really mean it's okay. In fact, it means it's not very good, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. He picked up on that and he said, well, tell me about it. I said, well, okay, here's why I don't like it as much as I normally do. Now, imagine if I'd not been a loyal customer. This was my first time there. I would just assume, rightfully so, that the lasagna is always terrible and I'd never go back again. But here's what Andy did. I think that was so smart. He asked me more questions. He got that data, and then he went to the chef and owner, shared that feedback. The chef came over to me and said, hey, what's wrong with the lasagna? Why don't you like it? Now we're friends, so that's, you could talk like that. What do you mean you don't like the lasagna? What's going on? So we talked about it. We found out they had a new line cook in the kitchen who hadn't quite mastered the lasagna recipe. He was able to quickly share that feedback, make the adjustment. Nobody else got bad lasagna. And of course, they say the next time you come back, try the lasagna, it's going to be great. And it was. So that unstructured feedback very quickly prevented negative reviews. It prevented customers from leaving and never coming back. And it helped them fix a simple problem before it ever became a really big issue. So that unstructured data, if you're paying attention, is incredibly important. So I hope that answers the question that many of you had about customer feedback. It's in all places. It can be overwhelming, but don't make it overwhelming. Take a piece of data, make it important, use it to make it better. Okay, got a great question here about Yelp reviews. And the question is, do they expire? Can they be deleted, etc.? And so I just did a webinar with Yelp. And if you go to youtube.com and just search Yelp, go to the Yelp channel. I'm webinar still near the top. So if you have a small business or you use Yelp, we did a lot of questions and answers around that. But let's respond to this one particularly. So Yelp reviews, to my knowledge, don't expire, but how they get used by Yelp really depends on a few factors. So over time, what Yelp does, it has a formula that tries to anticipate which reviews are the most valuable to customers, and it prioritizes those reviews. But it doesn't mean that other reviews don't go away. They just become harder to find, especially the older they get. And if there's an old review that not a lot of people have kind of commented on or found useful, then that tends to fade away. Now you can, as a consumer, sort through reviews. So you can change and toggle the Yelp, it's called Yelp sort. You could change it to say, show me the newest first, or I want old reviews if you really want to. So they don't go completely away, but they hide, if you will, or they're harder to find. There's other factors that can determine whether or not a review is easy or hard to find. It could be how authentic the review appears to be. Yelp does a lot of work to weed out reviews that are not authentic. Maybe it's somebody that's just flaming a business because they actually work for a competitor, or maybe it's somebody that's propping up a business, but they work for that company. And so Yelp does a lot of that. Years ago, something like 16% of Yelp reviews were fake. An in-depth research was done on this. And so Yelp has really taken this seriously. They also, the other part of the question that was asked here is, can they be deleted? They cannot be deleted by the company or restaurant. Now they can be reported if they're abusive or they're flagrantly false, and that might help. But a bad review that's inaccurate can actually help your company. And so this is kind of a fun thing. It's counterintuitive, but it can help your company. So let me give you an example. There was I was doing some restaurant work. So there was another review, and it was a 1-star review of another restaurant. And the review started with liars. And this person was ranting and saying that they had asked their server about the restaurant's branzino and was told something that they thought was a lie. That the branzino was farm raised, but it was in a open ocean farm in a 2-mile long pen. It was not in a onshore kind of small pen. And the person accused the restaurant of lying and saying, well, most branzino is from Connecticut. There's no way that happened. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. And how does this one-star review help the restaurant? Well, it helps the restaurant in a couple of ways. One is customers actively look for negative reviews, and then they look at not only what the person says and how the restaurant responds. And there's been research that is done that says if someone is inherently unreasonable or impolite, that actually hurts their credibility. So a ranty review who's someone who's really angry and clearly exaggerating, starting with liars, 1 star, and this is wrong, and customers are already discounting the impact of the review. But other research also found that if the business or the employee responds politely and professionally, third-party observers, in other words, other people reading that review, are more likely to empathize with that person or business. And so this restaurant did a brilliant job of responding. They responded and said, hey, so-and-so, thank you for sharing your concerns. We checked with our chef and we double checked our sources and confirmed that our branzino is coming from the Mediterranean. Here's where it is. While we do know that some branzino comes from this place you're referring to, that's not ours. And if you have any more questions about the origins of our fish, please feel free to contact us. So they very politely, very respectfully disputed the customer's inappropriate, inaccurate claim. They didn't get sucked into this liars bit. And so now as a third party, you read this, you see unreasonable customer, very professional response from the business. The business's credibility goes up. I empathize more with them. I'm now more likely to give them a try. So those angry, ranty reviews, if you respond professionally, actually increase the chances of a customer coming to you. And now to connect it back to the guaranteed customer experience, if we will, let's connect it back to the book. Our branzino is farm raised in this 2-mile long pen where they have plenty of room to roam. That's a promise, right? And someone called them out and said, I don't believe you. And they double checked and verified it and increased their credibility by saying, absolutely, it's a promise. And here are the actions we're taking to ensure we're delivering on that promise, since we know the source of your food is very important to many consumers. So it's a great utilization of that model. And Laura, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. Okay, I've got a couple more to go here. But if you have more questions like that one, please feel free to share them, or more reactions, share them via chat. It's great hearing for people participating. So one of the questions was, how do we maintain great experiences? And I think this is an important question. Let's say you've created this great vibe in your company and now you're scaling. And scaling is really, really tough to do. I've got one location or just 5 employees. That's pretty easy to be consistent. I have 10 locations and 100 employees. Really, really difficult. So how do you scale? And I think there's 3 aspects, if you will, that you can look at. And in the book, I talked a little bit about a vacation rental property that my wife and own. It's a cabin in the Southern California mountain town called Idlewild. Our cabin's called the Overlook. And this is something we've owned the cabin for almost 5 years now. And so maintaining and consistently improving the consistency, but also the quality of our guests' experience is something we're obsessed with. And so I'm going to use them as kind of the Overlook as a bit of a model here for 3 things you can do to maintain that consistency. Number 1 is you have to have a monitoring process in place. So at the Overlook, we monitor the guest experience in a number of ways. First and foremost, our property manager. They are people on the ground. So before every guest checks in, they do an inspection. After every guest leaves, they do a departure inspection again. So we got 2 inspections, and housekeeping team also will sometimes notify the property manager if there's any issues or any things that need to be fixed. So that inspection's big. My wife and I, one of us, once a month, we will go to the cabin and we have a much more in-depth preventative maintenance and inspection checklist that we go through to make sure everything is fantastic. So continuously inspecting your experience, monitoring your experience is a huge part of that maintenance. The second is we need to see things through our guests, our customers' perspective. And at the Overlook, we do that in a number of different ways. Certainly guest feedback. So our property manager gets feedback from our guests after every stay. We monitor, as does our property manager, reviews on sites like Yelp, etc. And also, my wife and I experience our cabin as guests would be. We probably do this around 4 times a year, where we will stay in our own cabin and we will go through that experience, because there's something different from going through a maintenance checklist in just a day and staying there for a few days and realizing, hey, this pan is getting a little worn out, or we could really use one more of these, or whatever the case may be. So having that perspective, I think, is an important part of continuously making sure you have a great experience. The third aspect is communication. Many of our businesses rely on multiple partners to ensure we're delivering the experience, and the Overlook is no different. So when we think about this, we have a number of partners. Our property manager, first and foremost, they advertise the Overlook, they book the Overlook, they're the ones taking care of the guest. But we also have other partners that help us out. We had a pipe break under our spa deck earlier this winter, and having a plumber come out and fix that. We had a dishwasher break, which was a huge hassle, especially we have a nationwide shortage of dishwashers. And to get that repaired and replaced before the next guest came in, we had to rely on another partner there. We recently did some upgrades. We put in a concrete walkway to replace a gravel walkway. We have to have a partner take care of that for us. So if you have partners that you rely on, whether it's delivery companies, repair companies, inspections, third-party contact centers, you name it, your partners have to be critical to that process. You always have to be working with them. So maintaining that customer focus, maintaining great experiences, you have to monitor it. You have to have multiple data sources to understand what that customer experience is like, and you have to communicate very clearly and effectively with all of your partners that are part of that experience. All right, I think we got time for one more. Maybe I could squeeze in a question if you have one, if you're tuning in live. But the question was, the last question I have on my list I wanted to get today was, should guarantees change? Should we change our guarantee? And I would say to you, yes and no. I think guarantees should always be evaluated. Whether or not you change them depends. And I want to give you two examples of guarantees. One's changed, one's not. And they're both companies I did not talk about in the guaranteed customer experience. I might have mentioned them offhand, but didn't profile them. But two different approaches, and they're both fine. So one is, I am a huge fan of In-N-Out Burger. I love In-N-Out. It's my favorite fast food place. And they have guaranteed the same experience since 1948, which is quality, courtesy, and cleanliness. And in fact, if you go to the In-N-Out website today, big front page of the website is this gorgeous, juicy hamburger, fries, and a drink. Quality you can taste. That's the brand promise right there. That guarantee has not changed. And the reason, if you look at In-N-Out compared to a competitor like McDonald's, they both started in 1948 as fast food burger places. But today, on a store-by-store basis, In-N-Out crushes McDonald's in terms of customer loyalty, in terms of revenue, in terms of any metric you want to look at. In-N-Out is at the top. McDonald's is typically near the bottom, because McDonald's has been all over the place in terms of what they're actually promising and what their guarantee is. In fact, one of the success stories during the pandemic is McDonald's realized by simplifying their menu, taking a lot of these options off that aren't as popular, they made it easier for their franchise operators to focus on keeping promises. Quality and order accuracy has gone way up at McDonald's, and in the past year, their profitability has gone up as well. So some guarantees, we don't change them. Now, on the other hand, some guarantees that are a bedrock still need to change. There's two companies. I'm a fan of both. They're both in the same line of business, REI and LL Bean. So their line of business fundamentally is, are you an outdoorsy person? Do you like to hike and camp? We're going to outfit you. And LL Bean and REI both do that very well. Now, both companies are famous for a guarantee that used to be, hey, you don't like something, wear it for 3 years and bring it back, no problem. And both of them a few years ago realized that the vast majority of customers, this was fine. This was great, but there were some serial abusers. So people would literally go to a yard sale and buy an old piece of REI or LL Bean equipment and then take it to the store and get store credit. So they were really abusing this. And both of these companies around the same time said, we need to modify our guarantee a little bit to be a little more stringent while still staying true to the spirit of it, which is you're going to love this product. So what they both did was they said, all right, we'll give you a year. If there's something wrong with it, it's defective, it's broken, still lifetime. But if you just don't like it, we'll give you a year. And it's inherently reasonable. And I can tell you as an REI customer, a couple of years ago, I bought a jacket and I didn't love it. But you got to wear a jacket a few times, especially when it's cold. And I wore it a few times and I still didn't love it. There was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't defective. I just didn't love it. I bought it at REI. So I bring it back to REI. I owned it for 3 months. I said, I'd like to return this jacket. No problem. But what the person did do, and this was smart, they said, well, may I ask you, what did you not like about it? And I said, well, I didn't expect it. It didn't keep me as warm as I expected. I'm very active and here's what I was looking for. And it just didn't deliver. And they were able to suggest an alternative jacket that I bought that day, along with many other items, since I'm there in the store, that I've had now for several years. So the guarantee that REI has around their products provides me as a customer the assurance that I could try something that might be a little out of my comfort zone. And if it doesn't work out, it's going to be okay. And so the modification REI and LLB made was, okay, we'll give you up to a year to cover that. So I think that was a good modification. All right, we're just about out of time. These were some great questions that you submitted ahead of time. So thank you so much. Hopefully we got to your questions today. Look for an email tomorrow about the same time with a link to the replay of our webinar. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me. Go to guaranteedexperience.com/contact and you'll find all my information. Get to me directly. Questions about the book, success stories. You want some more insights? I'm happy to share. So thank you all for being here on the webinar today, or if you're listening to the recording, I hope you enjoyed the book or are enjoying it so far. And one thing I will tell you about the book is it is guaranteed to help. So if you pick up the book, check out page 5. You will find my personal guarantee there. All right. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again soon.